Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world's leading global brands. Today we have a special guest on the show. I'm joined once again by my good friend Eileen McDargh, who's an international speaker, international expert on strategy and resilience in the workplace, best-selling author and chief energy officer at the Resilience Group. Welcome back to the show, Eileen. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad it's Friday. But I don't know, given today's environment, you can't tell Friday from Sunday anyway.
That's a good point. I've been, now I'm back in the office is a bit easier, but before that I was losing track. I didn't know what day of the week it was. I'm sure everyone listening can probably are with us on that one. I see you're representing the UK today with your jumper.
I am. Oxford. I went there one semester. I loved it. I decided I would wear this in honor of your accent.
Oh, thank you. Well, next time I'll make sure I'll try and do my best to find an equivalent. Before we jump in, tell everyone who missed our last episode a little bit more about yourself and sort of your journey and background experience.
I have had my own consulting practice, I hate to say this, for 40 years, which is amazing because I'm only 21. So I have no clue how that happened. And basically my background is in communication and leadership. I became intrigued actually when I left a corporate PR job because I hated it. That started me on the road of looking at authentic work, also Burnout, which was my first book, Work for a Living and Still Be Free to Live. And over the course of time, I've facilitated senior management retreats, helped teams, and really over the last almost two decades, this notion of resilience has intrigued me. And what does that really mean? And given what's going on today, the topic is more important than ever.
We spoke a few months back before COVID and you was talking about this new book coming. We could never have foreseen, what unfolded since then. But obviously this wasn't inspired by COVID, but why did you write this new book? What was the initial inspiration behind this?
Well, the inspiration was over the last 2+ years, 3, when I would be asked to make some keynote addresses or whatever, resilience was in the context of burnout. And I got to tell you, when you're standing in front of 5,000 pharmacists and PharmD students, and what they want is overcoming burnout with resilience, and they stand at the end of your presentation, I got to tell you, they're not standing for me. They're standing because they got some ideas they could use. And I thought, I got to do something with that. That was March. And in May of this past year, the World Health Organization declared burnout to be an occupational hazard. And I began to do the research. It was everywhere. I mean, it is, sadly to say, it's a pandemic of the way people are working. And I thought, I have to write the book. So that's why it's Burnout to Breakthrough. And the subtitle, Building Resilience to Refuel, Recharge, and Reclaim What Matters. I had no idea when I turned the manuscript in December that 2 months later, we're facing a real pandemic. And the issues become even larger.
And I experienced that firsthand. And I shared this on our workshop yesterday, Eileen, with some of the people that are listening, that I worked myself sick in the first few months of the pandemic. I worked myself to literally where I had started having panic attacks, a lot of high anxiety, because I was sitting there and just, I was losing track of literally hours in the day, what day of the week it was, because I didn't have that work routine, which naturally has breaks. And I really, burnout really hit me. And then I had to kind of sit down with my wife and say, okay, I need to create a schedule, make sure I intentionally create breaks, gaps in my diary. I can't be on Zoom calls for 10 hours a day. And then, on the calls to US clients till 2 a.m. I can't sustain this. And I know so many people.
That's so real, what you've experienced, because that's one of the things that with this lockdown and people working from home, we're discovering that people are working more. They're not doing what finally your whole body said do, is stop. You got to create structure for yourself. Yeah. Because when you're in the work environment, you have structure. When we're here, there is no structure. So thank goodness you did something about that.
Yeah, I didn't have a choice, right? My body told me, right? It was I stopped exercising, stopped doing my normal routine was disrupted, and it came back with a vengeance. There's only a lot of people now are kind of overworking because they're so afraid of losing their job, or there's so many other reasons why people. We've seen everyone's talking about how productivity has gone up when working, but no one's seeing the consequences. of
Well,
why
and
productivity is
productive in what way? I
exactly.
mean,
It's
is
just
it really? And that's the other thing I think that actually it's a positive what's happening is that I think really wise leaders are going to ask those people that are on the Zoom call, what is it that you're doing and does it add value? And are you doing stuff that if we stop, we say, why do I do this? This is stupid. Why do we have this process? Why do we use this system? Why am I filling out these incredible? We have an opportunity to actually rethink our business and make it more effective because now we can say, whoa, stop. Let's look at this.
You talk about in the book how you describe resilience as energy management. Could you elaborate on that?
So first, let me define resilience because I disagree with the dictionary.
That's a good point.
Dictionary basically says it's bounce back, right? Oh, good for you, Chris. I'm just going to bounce back. Well, number one, you're not a piece of steel that's bent, and you're not a willow tree. The human system never goes back. As someone wisely said, you cannot enter the same river twice. It's gone. It's moved. You are different today, Chris, because of what you experienced. You're not going to go back. So I define resilience as the ability to grow through challenge or opportunity, that you end up wiser, smarter, better on the other side. No growth, you're not moving forward. And in order to grow, I need energy. At the end of the day, do I have the mental, emotional, physical energy that allows me to move forward? Think about what is energy. When you and I were back in science classes, it was the capacity to do work. No energy, no work. So it is looking at how is it that I either deplete my energy and how am I going to renew it? And that's one of the questions I think for leaders. When you ask what are people doing, are we having them do things that is just depleting their energy? There's nothing left here. And it creates a whole different level of conversation.
How do we identify then those energy drains?
Well, I think the energy drains, first and foremost, is to say, what is it that's going on in my head? What is it that I'm saying to myself I'm big on language. I'm big on words. I'm a wordsmith. That every time we say, I have to do this, stop and say, no, I'm choosing to do this. There's a big difference between have to and choose.
Reframing it. It's not what you say, it's how you, yeah.
Exactly. And when this whole pandemic thing started, within 2 weeks, I was asked to speak for destination managers around the globe. These are people who run conference centers, resorts, because the meetings industry just stopped. And I said, one of the things we have to realize is that this notion of social distancing is the wrong word. It's physical distancing. What we yearn for is social connection. There's a big difference.
There's a big difference.
And so that's what we want. That's why I'm sitting here looking and talking at you, because at least it feels like we have some social connection. So the first thing is to say then, what is it I'm telling myself? I'm choosing this, and what are other choices I can make? Might not like some of those choices, but the more choices that I have, the more opportunity I have to become resilient. When we think of it's the survival of the strongest, no. Survival of the fittest is the one who has the most choices. So we want to look, what are those choices? Some of the things that drain my energy can also be people. You and I have people around us that when you finish with them, you're just like, oh God, I can't. Like negative people, they're big energy suckers. Not getting feedback. When I work and nobody tells me, is this right? I can feel my energy just go. So the things that drain my energy, and then what refuels it. And you said something, Chris, earlier. You said, you stopped. One of the things you said is you stopped exercising when you realized how hard you were working. See, I think one of the ways in which we begin to get our energy back is to begin with the physical body.
Oh, 100%. That's completely linked, right? If I'm exercising, I mentally feel better, and vice versa. Like, it's a knock-on effect. Something my co-founder always talks about. He says, Chris, when I noticed that you stop exercising, the anxiety comes back and everything. It's a knock-on effect. I can tell you right now, I've never had an anxiety attack or felt anxious when I'm in peak physical condition. It doesn't exist. It's only when I stop sleeping, going to bed on time, and I stop eating healthy and exercise that all comes back with a vengeance, and
It
that's exactly
does.
what happened. I was working really super hard, head down, like I need to, obviously we were an events company, so we was massively disrupted. Our business kind of disappeared overnight, so that was added stress. But even during those times, I actually need to double down on my health, double down on exercise, double down on making sure I go to bed on time and eating healthy, because everything helps.
You just gave your listeners, your viewers, a great example of what has to happen. In fact, Chris, because of our time difference, I got up at 5:15 here in California. I took a power walk down just to look at my ocean, to turn around and come back, so I would have some kind of physical movement before I sit here at this desk and talk to you. I ate my little scrambled eggs. I have my cranberry juice in here, so I can get ready for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right.
What are some of the practices we can adopt then to help manage our energy, and make sure that we're in a positive mindset? We are understanding the type of language you're using, the effects that it has on us.
Okay. I believe, besides looking at what we're saying to ourselves, begin to say what we're doing, is to control the controllable. So you and I cannot control what is going on globally. I can say, of what of this can I control? And that's everything from wearing the mask when I go out, to the physical distancing, to making sure that I take care of my physical body. But I will tell you,
and the content we consume, right? I think that's a big one. And the content we consume.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. If I'm sitting there,
watching news every day, depressing, every horrible story that comes up. Yeah,
it is. So I think that's another thing, is I can control what I read.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at horror movies. I don't want to look at war movies. I want something that makes me feel good, or that I pick up a book that it inspires me. I mean, I love the poet Mary Oliver, reading her poems. In fact, there's one in the morning, and if I didn't have to go on with you, I would have done a 5-mile run. I can do it. I can do it out in the, quote, wilderness on a trail. I don't see people. It's just great. But she says, "Hello, sun in my face. Hello, you who make the morning and spread it across the fields and into the faces of tulips and nodding morning glories, and even the windows of the miserable and the crotchety. Best preacher that ever was, dear star that just happens to be where you are in the universe, to ease us with warming touch, to hold us in the great hands of light. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Watch how I greet the day in happiness, kindness, and gratitude."
Amazing.
Now, that last word is my word. I added that. But when you say, what can we do? I think when we begin the day in that way, what am I grateful for? I do have another day. But one of the things I think is that we don't know where our day goes. So I created this methodology a long time ago, and it is to keep a time log for at least 3 days. And it looks like this. You take your, I don't know, whatever you have to write on a pad, and you make 3 columns, and one says time, here's the time, what, and who. And just begin to watch when activities shift. And the first time I did this, I had no idea until you get up, go to bed. It's interesting. Most everything that you and I will do will come in 15-minute increments. So it's like 1.25, that's an hour and 15 minutes. And anyway, you look at that. You spread it out on the kitchen counter, put it on the dining room table, and begin to look and say, why am I doing that? And you begin to say, what do I want to keep? What do I want to amend? What do I want to get rid of? The first time I did this, Chris, I had no idea the amount of time I was giving to a position I had on a national board. I was on a board of directors of a national organization. I didn't know how much time that was involved. I looked down at that and said, for this phase of my life, this isn't important. And I resigned. But if I had not done that time log, I would never have known. It's kind of like when we get to December 31st and you say, where did the year go?
I did something similar like a few months back, but it was more about a lot of the administrative tasks that I was doing that were taking me, tens of hours during the month. And I looked at how much time I spent on that, and I literally realized there was days in the month. It added up to days, 2 or 3 days that I was doing on some of these administrative tasks as a co-founder of a startup. And we sat down and we automated all of those tasks and put different technologies in space to automate and link, whether it's invoicing, whether it's finance, whether it was, responding to inquiries on our website, and we automated everything, and now we have an extra 2 or 3 days,
Marvelous.
which is huge for us. But without doing that, we'd still be doing them over and over again. If you look at that over a course of, a month, you've got 3, 4, 5 days available to invest in yourself in some of those positive tasks.
What I love is that you figured out how to use technology to free you up. The flip side, one of the danger sides, is technology can also be the thing that exhausts us.
Yep.
And when I say it exhausts us, it's that we're on all the time, that we don't put time out, turn this off, get away from the email. And so what also happens, it's another thing that can lead to the burnout, is that we multitask. Humans are not made to multitask. Our brain does not handle that. So what happens if I'm sitting here, let's say I'm answering an email, and all of a sudden, ding, here comes a text message, or ding, something, and you stop what you're doing and you answer that. The research says it can take us 20 to 30 minutes to get back on task. So now I just use more energy to get back on task because I didn't put this log, no, I'm not going to do this.
Really? Because I pride myself on that, Eileen.
Well,
So
I have to
my
tell
wife
you.
always comes in my living room and she says to me, in my office at home, and she says, because I'll normally have like one monitor where I'm replying to clients, right? And I'll have another monitor with a completely different set of work on, and I can go in between. I can even watch a full-blown movie whilst doing work and actually be engrossed in the movie whilst working. And I thought that was a really good skill to be able to do that. And clearly it's not. I'm not
Well, all of the data that I see the first piece actually came out of Canada, in Toronto, McGill, I think it was McGill University, that looked at what happens to human beings when we try to do this multitasking.
Mhm.
And, the younger generation thinks I can do all of this stuff. I got to tell you, just try to do one thing.
One thing at a time.
There's an man by the name of Cal Newport. He is a professor of computer science out at Georgetown, which is interesting, computer science. His books that he have written are all about focus and eliminating all of these distractions and what happens when you can have what he calls deep work.
So what can organizations do? Obviously, as you know, Eileen, our listeners are HR executives, global brands. How can they help avoid burnout, support their employees, and make sure that this is something that we're aware of? Because obviously is it in itself, as you said earlier, is its own pandemic.
All right. So let's say what can an HR executive do? First and foremost, I really think when I said what we really yearn for is social connection,
Mm-hmm.
what I really believe is that number one, it's how candid can our conversations be with the team that we have around you. When I say candid, it's really checking in, and it's not just how you doing today. It's really saying, what is the work that you're doing right now that makes you feel really good? What is it that you're doing right now that you can't figure out why you're doing it? How are you within that home setting? What kind of, because some of the things that exhaust us, we don't have the right technology. We might not have the right technology. It might be old. So I'm having to redo things because I don't have the right technology. The absence of feedback. Again, it's like you're working in this vacuum. Also, when what I say is not heard upline. Karen Hertz and David Dye have a wonderful new book called Courageous Cultures. And it's all about how you hear people say, well, they don't care what I say. Doesn't matter. Falls on empty ears. You got a suggestion box or something. Nobody pays any attention. Is how do we create, and this is a great test for HR executives, can we create a culture in which we actually listen? And that's not listening to say, what's my snappy response? It's listening with empathy, listening to understand so that we have conversation going both ways, always. But it takes courage because some of the things that you as an executive might hear, you don't want to hear.
Which is why a lot of companies avoid the questions, right? I heard a terrible example of one of my friends who said, and they work in HR, I'm not going to mention who they are, whose boss said, who's a HR director, don't ask the questions because they don't want the response to hear the responses, because it means they have to do something about it, which I thought was shocking to hear that. But many people avoid the conversation because they're worried about what's going to come back.
That's really true. Or I'll get fired by asking that, and that means then that you're living in an environment of fear.
Basically, yeah.
And I'm not going to get the best work out of my team if it's in an environment of fear. So I think HR executives have a wonderful opportunity with their own courage, by the way, because they're going to have to speak truth to power. And that isn't always easy. There's an organization here in the US called the Conference Board, and it is made up of HR people in all manners of industry. And I addressed them, I think, 2 years ago. And I was talking about their need to be courageous and ask senior leadership why you're doing what you're doing. One of our major airlines came up with a policy that said that the people that are at the counter, when you and I go to check in, when we used to be able to go in and get on planes, that if the plane was delayed, wasn't going out, that they could no longer help that passenger get on another flight if it was a different airline. So in some cases, you're going to have to spend the night because this airline does not fly. We might have one on this one and this one, but I'm not allowed to do that for you. Can you imagine the heat that those people are going to take at that?
Oh, man.
And I said, this is an example. It's
already a hard enough job, right?
Well, this is a great example. So you create this tension between this front-facing person and a passenger because people at senior levels said, no. You can only put them on our planes, period, end of sentence. And I said, you know what? That's an example of not somebody that HR didn't say, do you know what you're doing to the people? Do you know what's going to happen to the passengers? I really want you to reconsider this decision.
A positive example of that, Eileen, which I've seen come throughout all of this, which is amazing, is that so many companies now, even I was speaking to Pat Wardle's Chief HR Officer of ServiceNow yesterday, and they're actually now partnering with other global companies who are letting go of employees and have created a global network, even competitors, to hire from each other.
Wonderful.
Right. And in the past, these are competitors, multi-billion-dollar organizations are saying, actually, this is a time where we can get together. And yes, we're competitors. And yes, under normal circumstances wouldn't happen. But now they're partnering, creating this global network where millions of job opportunities are being filled throughout their network. So that's the opposite of what you just said.
That's wonderful. And I hope that you can spread that word vast across all time zones, because what a great resource and an acknowledgement that just because I have Joe over here doesn't mean that Joe can't work over there. What are the transferable skills? What are the things that that's great.
And Maggie, love your comment as well on LinkedIn. And I completely agree with you. We've definitely become more human through this experience. Everyone is definitely showing more their whole self, right? And the vulnerability there has been so refreshing to see. And even for me, talking about, some of my anxiety and some other things has been something I was always scared about. But I think the more vulnerable I've become, the better leader I've become. And actually it's a strength, vulnerability for me. So I completely agree with you on that one. And Colleen, on a serious note as well, I'm the same as you. I have no notifications on my phone on any app whatsoever, because I want to avoid what Eileen mentioned earlier about, we're always on, right? That's one of the negatives of technology. The only person whose notifications do come through is my wife's. You gotta make sure that one's on, because otherwise you get it, right? Because even, I have friends, colleagues, customers who will send me in the same few minutes a LinkedIn message, a Slack message, a WhatsApp message, an email, a phone call, and a text, just so they can get hold of me, right? And they're like, well, I'll get Chris somehow. And then we could just never turn off. So I made that decision years ago, to be honest. I don't have, if anyone knows me, my phone's on silent, the notifications are off, apart from my wife. Because if it's important, my wife, it can wait. Like, I don't need to wake up at 2, 4 a.m. to reply to an email. It can wait.
Well, in fact, on our smartphones, I have the Apple phone, but you can put this, like, this is on mute.
Yeah,
so
same
I
here.
Notifications.
Exactly. Yeah.
Except except I have family. And when I was caring for my aging mother, that was the only call that would come through.
Exactly. Same with me. You just turn on, you can choose those people that you definitely need to come through, and everything else can wait, right?
Right.
And that's something that as leaders we need to be conscious of. Something again we shared on our well-being session yesterday. As leaders, we need to model that. If we're sending our employees emails at 2, 3 a.m. or on a Saturday, they're going to model that same behavior. They're going to feel under pressure and stress that I have to reply to Chris to be able to do that. And I've made that mistake before. I'm not perfect. I've messaged my employees on the Saturday, not thought about it and done it. And then I'm like, actually, I need to make sure that we set that example and understand it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the technology can help there, Eileen. There's a lot of different platforms now where you can set rules that you won't get an email or you won't get a message during these times, or you get a notification saying, are you sure you want to email Eileen? It's like 2 a.m. over in the US right now. So I think we're going to get better at it, but we've got a long way to go.
I really appreciated one of the comments that you made, Chris, was that we are becoming more human.
Yeah, Maggie made a good point there. Yeah, 100%.
I think that's, I'm sitting looking at your office. This is my office. If it were brighter back there, you'd see pictures of my family. You'd see there's a ferry that's flying that my grandkids gave me that's flying over here. If I had a dog, for all I know, the dog would be jumping in, or if I had a 3-year-old, they might come in and say, mommy, mommy, mommy. And I think when we acknowledge that we know more about each other now than we did when we were in our little cubicles.
It's crazy. I said the same thing yesterday. How crazy is that we're so far away, but with some, but by when we were together, we were so far away, but now being so far away has brought us closer.
It's an interesting paradox. I remember speaking to one employee when I was doing some kind of teamwork, and she said she got a new manager in like 4 months. She's never met him. All he does is send her emails. That's it. So what kind of allegiance, what kind of engagement do you think is there with this manager who hasn't even taken the time to even leave whatever facility or and Zoom and everything else was available then too. Anyway, so I appreciate that notion, because right now I think as this is going on, and here in the States, and now not only do I have a pandemic, not only do I have social unrest, not only do I have a very unhealthy political climate, I'm in one of the Western states that is now hit with the wildfires. I'm looking out and I can't see. Normally I would see my ocean. It is fog and smoke. And so there's a tremendous amount of tension that is in many of us. And I think the ability just to come together and just talk about how you're feeling and look at what is positive that you can do is important.
There is no silver bullet, but it really is kind of just leading with empathy, right?
I'm going to be doing a little videotape later on this today or tomorrow that we'll be getting ready to send out. And one of the first things I want to say is the resiliency and moving from burnout to breakthrough is a muscle. And just like any muscle, you don't walk into a gym your first day and pick up 50 pounds and start going like this.
Tell my co-founder that, because that's what he tries to do.
You start small.
Yeah.
One of the things that can allow us to feel braver is to do something that we've never done before, and preferably something that intimidates us. Now, I'm not saying go jump off the Eiffel Tower, don't go free fall without a parachute, but what is something that you can do that you've never done before? And when we do it, we go, wow, I can do that. I might not do it again, but I started this practice 3 years ago, and every month I keep a log of what have I done that I've never done before.
Love it.
And it's fascinating. And it also says, I'm stronger than I thought I was.
You are right, though, because that's something I always talk about. And people listen to the show. I always talk about this, Eileen. A lot of my friends and family always say to me, why do you get really good at that? And why don't you just stick? Because you never stick to things. And it's because of what you just said, because I enjoy being uncomfortable and being really bad at something and getting good at it. It's the journey, right? So whenever I get, mainly sports for me, but when I get good and at some level of mastery, I get bored because I'm not pushing myself anymore. Then I'll go to the next thing like you described, and I'm always trying something new. Do you want to grab some water, by the way, Eileen?
I will.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
yeah, grab some cranberry juice. give yourself a break. Yeah, so I completely get it. You know, seek discomfort is really the kind of the word I always, or the sort of two words I always in my head: seek discomfort, and that's super exciting because that's where, and that feeling of being uncomfortable, you get used to it. After a while, it's like that's your default mode. And I think this is such a wonderful place to be, where you're constantly challenging yourself and pushing yourself to beyond new boundaries.
That's interesting. So what do you say? I'm curious about this now that you've said that. What is your why?
So it's interesting because I went to a workshop recently with a guy called Nick Craig, who helps companies, organizations, individuals find their purpose. So my purpose statement, actually, I have a purpose statement. So my purpose statement is to be the unbreakable artist that dances you to life. Now I'll explain what that means because it's personal to me. So unbreakable artist is, when I grew up, I had quite a tough upbringing, a lot of violence, alcohol in a household. It was not the greatest thing, but what I used to do to distract myself was draw, paint, and create. So whilst all the craziness is happening in your house, that was my way of getting lost. So unbreakable artists describes that thing. When I joined organizations, Eileen, without realizing, where I had my biggest strengths was in actually creating new products, and so hence the unbreakable artist. So in our business, my focus is always around new products, innovation, graphic design, the website, the podcast, the arts. So that was a link between that for me. And everywhere I went in organizations, I was always trying to challenge the status quo and push us and break what we're doing. Why are we doing it that way? Why can't we do it this way? Why are we not focusing on these new technologies? So that's where the unbreakable artist part. And Dances You to Life is a reference to, I used to be a professional dancer.
Oh.
So yeah. So I used to be a professional break dancer. So Dances You to Life, it refers to dance, but also the fact that one of my biggest things that I love to do is develop talent. So I get the biggest satisfaction out of hiring someone in the organization and helping them flourish and seeing them flourish. So Dances You to Life is in reference to that. So those are really, personally, that's where that's the two places I love to live. I live in one side of the world where it's around creativity, disruption, challenging status quo, product development, anything creative. On the other side is the people side, where I love working with my team to help them grow and develop and become a better version of themselves as well. So that's me. That's the purpose statement that I kind of always work on, and I do that whenever I'm making a decision, Eileen. I'm like, does it align with those two things? If it doesn't, I don't spend time on it. It makes my life a lot easier now. Now I have a purpose statement, because no matter what's happening in the world, I can fall back on that and say, is it aligned with my purpose? If the answer is no, then it's a very easy decision. So
the reason I ask you that is, when we talk about moving from burnout to breakthrough, at the end of the day, if I'm not clear on my why, I do a lot of stuff that doesn't feed me. And I've recently become acquainted and become actually an agent for the Why Institute. And what we help people look at is, what is your why? How does that operate? And then what do you do? So most of the time we start with the what, but what I hear you saying is that your big why is to always find a better way.
Yeah.
We could explore this later, longer, but when I can help people find a better way, and how I do it now is, making that the employee that comes out, how I say, well, how do we push this over here? And what happens as a result of that? And I'm really more and more intrigued that in this craziness of this world, as nutso as it is, when I can stay focused on why am I here, it allows me to refuel.
100%.
And it's what Frankl said, in the midst of the Holocaust. He said, man can survive any what if he has a why. And if you lose your why, you lose your way. So
I remember when I first saw the Simon Sinek TED Talk to start with why, and I'd been in the company for 10 years, and I was like, I can't even answer that question. How can I have been in this role for 10 years and I can't even understand what our why is as a business? Couldn't answer the question, and it stuck with me. I couldn't get out of my head. I was like, I'm going to this job every day. I'm spending, more than half my life here, and I have no idea. And even I asked my director and my CEO, and they didn't have a response of what is our why and what is our purpose. Why do we do what we do outside of just making money, right? And it was like no answer, and I couldn't get it out of my head. Yeah. It's like we're doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yes. And people don't join organizations and say, oh boy, I get to raise shareholder price 2%. Man, put that on my headstone. And look what she did. That doesn't pull me. And I think the more that organizations can begin to really clarify what is their purpose, and I always think it's people, profit, and planet. What is it that I do for people? What I do for the planet? Oh, yeah, there has to be profit in it. I'm not.
Yeah, you need money to do that.
Non-profit, you got some kind of profit to operate on. But that's. I love your explanation of that, and I appreciate you sharing that with all of us who are listening, because that might allow some people to get on this journey.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, Eileen. What is the kind of anything we've missed that we want to cover? I love this topic. I think it's super excited to share with everyone. What's the one thing you want people to take away from this and take away from the book?
The one thing I want them to take away from the book, believe it or not, there's two things. The first thing is to understand that you hold power by choosing what it is that you put around your life. So I want people to get out of this book that there is power in you when you begin to make some choices that allow you to recharge and reclaim what matters. And that those small choices that we make is one of the ways in which we build resilience. But I first have to stop and say, what the heck's going on? Here's the second thing I want them to walk away. Your place of power is now. It's not yesterday. And it's really not tomorrow. What is it that I choose to do today? Because when I can understand that now is the only time I have, then I understand that worrying over here isn't going to get me anywhere. What is it that I choose to do now? And if I understand that, then that gives me hope. Howard Zinn, the wonderful philosopher, said, to have hope, one does not need certainty, only possibility.
Absolutely love it. It's always a pleasure, Eileen. And I've taken away so much from this, and it reminded me of something I used to stick on top of my computer, which I'm going to get again and stick it out there. I always had one of my old bosses said to me, Chris, is what you're doing, saying, and the people you're surrounding yourself right now, is that getting you closer to achieving your goals? If not, stop doing it, right? So I always look at that. Is it what I'm saying to myself, internally, externally? Are the people surrounding, do what I'm physically doing, and are the people around me helping me getting closer to achieve my goals? If the answer is no, then stop doing it. It's easier said than done, right? But it's super important. And where can people, if they want to connect with you, Eileen, and learn more about the work you're doing, grab a copy of the book, where's the best place for them to go?
All right. Well, obviously Amazon's
taking over the world.
They're there. You can find it both in the print version. Here's the print version. You can get the print version. You can get the digital. We also have the audio. You have
a survey, right? For everyone, there's a survey, right? Everyone can take to see where they are on the very quickly.
It's a small. In the back, there's many references, and on my website, we will continue to add resources. I find resources because I'm not the sole, person who understands this. There's many, and the Maslow inventory for burnout is probably the one of the biggest ones. But there's smaller ones in here that you can just take to just say, where am I on this scale? How does it look? Yeah. And people can find me if they can spell my name. They can find me, because as far as I know, I am the only Eileen McDargh in the universe. That's my grandmother. So you can Google me. I'm on LinkedIn. MacDarling, M-A-C Darling. MacDarling is my Twitter handle. The Resiliency Group, either way, EileenMcDargh.com, theresiliencygroup.com. It'll get there for you. You can also buy the book there. And anytime I can help anyone.
I appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for all the work you do and for taking the time out to come on the show. Really appreciate it. And I always love your energy, and you are living your purpose, right? And everyone listening can feel it and sense it on the call. So keep up the great work, and I'm super excited, and it's definitely having a huge impact on people. So thank you for that. For everyone listening, thanks as always for tuning in. Also, if you're new, head over to hrdealers.com/podcast. That way you can subscribe via your favorite platform. We're everywhere that you want to be. Apart from that, have a great weekend, everyone. See you later, Eileen. Thanks a lot.